Today, we're going to focus on all of your rights under the Second Amendment and how they're being impacted by this pandemic. To understand how our rights are being impacted by the pandemic, we have to first take a step back and look at how we in the California Rifle Pistol Association examine your rights and deal with it. It's basically a pyramid. It's really simple to explain. If you think of the foundation as being the Second Amendment, that is where we build everything off of. And one side of that pyramid is known as firearms. That includes your access to them, your ability to go through a DROS system in the state of California, which we'll talk about more in future videos, as well as your ability to just go to a gun store. All of those have been impacted. But then there's a second part of that pyramid slide. That's known as ammunition. You know, is it available? Can you get it? What's the process? You know, are we staying in lines like we've had during some of the shortages in the past few years? And how is that trying to be controlled by the socialist left, the anti-gun lobby? And then finally is the exercise of once you put the ammunition and the firearm together, now you have something to go exercise with. And that may be target shooting, self-protection, hunting. It could be collecting. There's a lot of things. Because face it, if you don't have ammunition for your firearm, at best, it's a wall hanger, which is exactly what the left socialist-leaning anti-gun lobby wants. So let's look at kind of the hypocrisy and how they're trying to do it. Nobody is more active to take away your firearms rights during this time period than Mike Bloomberg. He may have dropped out of the election as a disgruntled former presidential candidate, but he's using all that angst to come after firearms, especially here in the Golden State. Now, many of you may be saying, well, what are you talking about, Rick? Because I haven't seen Mike Bloomberg anywhere in California. No, but you see every town, you see its derivatives, moms that demand action, students that demand action, mayors against illegal guns. Those are all owned and operated by Mike Bloomberg, people. You have to realize that whenever you see any article, any comment from any talking head that has those titles, it's Mike Bloomberg coming for you. It's Mike Bloomberg coming for your guns. And he is a hypocrite. Now, a lot of you may say, hey, that's inciting rhetoric, Rick. What are you trying to say? Here's what I'm going to say to you. You could go to National Review, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They've all reported on it. Mike Bloomberg has a security detail. Why? Because Mike Bloomberg says it's not safe in America. This is pre-pandemic. After the presidential election, I get threats. I perceive there's threats. So I have an armed security detail of 8 to 10 people watching me every day, protecting me every day, whether I'm in my beloved New York or anywhere else across the country. Wait a second. This is the same Mike Bloomberg that tells you and I and the rest of Americans, America's a safe place. You don't need a firearm to protect yourself. Well, if that's true, Bloomberg, why do you have them? Because you're an elitist. You're the typical elitist. You want everything for yourself, from firearms to land to everything in between. But we, the American people, aren't supposed to have that. Only the elitist billionaires are supposed to have that. You join the ranks of George Soros and others like Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein. Notice they're all anti-gun, and also, I will say it, straight out anti-American because they don't believe you should have the same rights as them. Moving on, when you start to look at what the impact of these groups has been, it's been to confuse the rhetoric, to place documents in front of city council people across the country, but especially here in California, to try to give them these templates to make them look like do-getters as they're doing no good. They're actually hurting you and I from being able to exercise our constitutional rights. And if they will so freely and willingly come after your Second Amendment rights, make no mistake, they're coming after the rest of the 27 amendments all day long. So here's what you need to look at. How do they do this? Well, in California, we shut down the Department of Motor Vehicles. We basically shut down the DROS system under the California Department of Justice. We say, oh, you and I shouldn't have guns because we're a threat if we're assembling in Santiago this last week. But hey, I'll also mention that there's almost 30,000 people, known felons with firearms in California, that law enforcement's being told not to go after. That's right. We know where the bad guys are. We know who has the firearms. and the state isn't doing anything about it. Now, they'll tell you that's not true. We arrested a half a dozen people, out of 30,000. Instead of trying to make people like you and I criminals by continuing to twist the law into their favor to make us criminals overnight while we sleep, why not spend that money going after the known criminals, the known rapists, murderers, and assaulters, people that are prohibited persons by the law? But no, during this pandemic, as others have stated, it's more fashionable to give someone a $500 or $1,000 ticket for breaking the pandemic social distancing rules in the state of California than to go after a known criminal. We would rather let these known criminals steal things, as long as you keep it under that $950 mark, than to actually prosecute them. And this is the problem in the state of California. This has gone so crazy that you have to stand in lines and wait. And let's talk about the DROS wait. The DROS wait is ridiculous. After you've went through the system one time, which I think is already ridiculous because every other state is 15 to 30 minutes, but California, it takes 10 days for the same thing. But after you go through it once, why do you have to go through it twice? Oh, the left will say it's a cool-off period. What am I cooling off? If I'm that erratic, that unstable, I'm going to use what I have, folks. Let's just be honest. Nobody says, I need something different. That's not what happens. That's not reality. Now move on to the exercise of those rights. What's happened there? Well, in some places in California, you're able to still go to a range and try to get your CCW and to move forward. And there's a lot of wonderful folks and sheriffs up and down the state that are working very hard against a hardened left agenda to keep that open. And you need to realize those sheriffs who have stood on your side through this are coming up for election in a year and a half, and you need to be out there voting to keep them in office and help them get others like them in office, because that's our last line of defense in the political system in this state. If there was ever a time to join the California Rifle Pistol Association, it's now.